What up, brawlers? Welcome back to Thrown Hands, episode 99, as we will be previewing the first card of 2021 Fight Night, Holloway versus Kattar. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Back at it. A little bit of an equipment upgrade on my end as well. So hopefully we'll be bringing the people some better quality podcasts as we branch out into 2020.
For sure. And to start off this 2021 year with, when it comes to previews, let's start off with a pretty good fight to start off the main card. Punalele Soriano versus Dusko Todorovic. Soriano hasn't fought in about in over a year, and Todorovic coming off a nice one in Fight Island. I mean, these two can both pack a punch, and they can both get it done on the ground. What's your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm not expecting this fight to go very long. Like you said, two guys that are great finishers, and that's what I've noticed the most from these two. Soriano a little bit more consistent with finishing people on the ground, had a rear naked choke win in LFA. His only fight in LFA, he jumped straight to the Contender Series from that, and then made his debut on the main card of the UFC at UFC 245. So he went straight onto a pay-per-view card, beat Oscar Pachota there in the first round with a KO. And then you look on the other side with Todorovic, and it's a very similar rise up for him. Came up fighting in Serbia, ended up on the Contender Series back in 2019, just like Soriano, a couple months apart. And then a second round KO for him against Daquan Townsend in his debut just a couple of months ago. So, like you said, a long layoff for Soriano coming back into this one, but still a guy that showed a lot of ability. And Todorovic was really impressive when we saw him just a couple months ago.
For sure. And what I noticed from Todorovic in his last fight is he likes to apply the pressure. And I think like you said, it won't last long because of the pressure that he likes to put on. So what are your keys for this matchup?
I think Todorovic is going to want to keep this on the feet and, like you said, keep that pressure up. Soriano can handle himself on the feet. He's got plenty of power and he's got plenty of ability, but he's a little bit more consistent on the ground than Todorovic is. Todorovic has a couple of submission wins to his credit really early in his career. Hasn't had one in the last 3 years, but I got to give him credit there. I think Soriano would be best served to take it there, but I think these guys are really going to be in a position where whoever takes control of the pace early in this fight is going to have the best bet to win it.
I'm not even going to add anything to that. My prediction, Todorovic is getting this done by KO in the second round. What about you?
We're on the same page there. I think it's going to be, I don't think this fight gets out of 2 rounds, and I think Todorovic wins it.
All righty. To the next bout of the evening, Joaquin Buckley versus Alessio Ditrico. Joaquin Buckley coming off a nice win against the Beverly Hills, somebody from Beverly Hills. I can't remember his name. Let me check that real quick. All right. That's right. He fought right. And Alessio Ditrico coming off a loss against Zach Cummings, whom we interviewed on the show, and I'll probably put that in the description. Alessio Ditrico has a lot riding on this fight because if he loses this, he's on the chopping block for a roster cut. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Joaquin Buckley to take a step up in competition and fight somebody a little more experienced. We obviously had the knockout of the year, in my opinion, when he took down Impa Kasangane back on Fight Island in October. He turned around in November and picked up a second round KO against Jordan Wright. So he's coming off back-to-back performances of the night bonuses since he lost to Kevin Holland in August. Buckley, honestly, a guy that's really made a name for himself in 2020 with 4 fights, one in LFA, 3 in the UFC, and he's looked great while he's done it. So I think this is an opportunity for Buckley to take a step up. Meanwhile, like you said for Ditrico, this might be the last shot for him to stick on this roster because he's been in the UFC for quite a while. He made his debut in 2016, but he's 3-5 in the UFC. That includes 3 straight losses. One of them was against Kevin Holland. You can't knock him for that. But now back-to-back losses against Makhmud Muradov and, like you said, Zach Cummings. Ditrico showed some promise in the past, has a performance of the night bonus to his credit, a really spectacular knockout with a knee back in 2017, but he just hasn't done it consistently. He's looked pretty rough as of late. I would say 4 losses if he ends up falling to Buckley on Saturday is probably the end of the line for him in the UFC.
For sure. All right. 2 keys. I think Joaquin Buckley, I mean, I think if he keeps it on the feet and controls the pace and pressure, he wins this fight. And if Ditrico, I think his ground game is a little more versed than Joaquin Buckley. So if he finds himself in a situation, I think he could take him down. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that adds up pretty well. It's a mix of styles, but I think it's an opportunity for both of these guys to really show what they've got. Ditrico because he has to, Buckley because he's trying to move up.
All right. Predictions. I think Buckley gets it done and Ditrico gets cut. I think Buckley knocks him out in the first round. What do you have to say?
I agree with you 100%. Joaquin Buckley, somebody to watch in 2021.
Absolutely. So to an interesting matchup here in the welterweight division. I'm intrigued by this one. Santiago Ponzinibio, he hasn't fought in a couple of years, but who he has fought, it's been pretty nice whom he has fought, and he has a nice resume. And Li Jingliang, sorry if I botched that, but he's been on the outside looking in for a little while now. I think if he wins this fight, he's into the top 15. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, two really interesting guys. Ponzinibio, like you said, really over a 2-year layoff now, actually, since he beat Neil Magny. But the guy's 27-3, and you look at going back, he hasn't had a ton of big name fights in the UFC. But the guys he's beaten, Neil Magny, Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson, Zach Cummings, who we just talked about, Court McGee, these are guys with legitimate places on the UFC roster. And I think he's going to continue to do that. He's a 7-year veteran of the UFC going back to 2013. So I think Santiago Ponzinibio is a really talented guy, trains with American Top Team, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a ton of ability. He's just had a 2-year layoff. He's finally coming back. He's had a bunch of fights canceled too. Pulled out due to a staph infection when he was supposed to fight Robbie Lawler back in 2019. And you know that really saps guys a lot in terms of their health, and it takes a long time to come back from something like that. He was supposed to fight Muslim Salikov initially in this fight. Li Jingliang stepping in on short notice, so this will be an interesting one, just as a mix of styles. Zhen Lang, both of these guys' last fights actually came against Neil Magny, and it was Lee losing to him back in March, but he's 17-6, fights with China Top Team. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so these are two guys with some interesting backgrounds. You know, Li Jingliang, you don't see a lot of Chinese fighters in the UFC having high-level jiu-jitsu. He's got that. So this will be a really interesting matchup between these two.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. I think you know, Lee's kind of out there when it comes to his skill set. He's very good with Chinese kickboxing and Chinese jacket wrestling. I mean, he can do it all, and both these guys can do it all. They're both very well versed. But I think when it comes to keys, I think Lee will probably favor the ground a little more against Santiago because Santiago has pretty heavy hands. So what are your thoughts on the keys?
I have to agree with you there. Ponzinibio, really strong hands, really good kickboxing. I mean, the guy trains with American Top Team. What do you expect? And then Lee, like you said, will probably try to take this to the ground a little bit. He's a really well-versed fighter, which I've been really impressed with when I've seen him in the past.
All right, predictions. I think Ponzinibio gets back on track, finds himself against his top 15 opponent with a knockout. What do you have to say?
I agree with you there. I think Ponzinibio has a ton of talent. He's 34, but I think he's really just scratching the surface of what he can do.
All right, to the co-main event of the evening, a 2013 welterweight title eliminator, Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. Both of these guys on their final bouts of their contract. Really interesting fight. They were scheduled to fight 7 years ago, but that didn't occur. But these two guys, we're getting the fight we want, and I think it'll be a good one. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, 36-year-old Carlos Condit, 40-year-old Matt Brown. Again, this is like a dream fight coming back to 2013. Condit coming off a win against Court McGee back in October. I remember previewing that, really doubting him coming into that fight, having lost 5 in a row. But he really didn't lose to anybody that he shouldn't. I mean, Robbie Lawler in a fight for the UFC welterweight championship back in 2016, Damian Maia, Neil Magny, Alex Oliveira, Michael Chiesa. He didn't lose to anybody bad in that stretch. He took pretty much 18 months off, more than that even, before taking on Court McGee, and he looked good in that fight. So Condit's really on the bounce back right now. Matt Brown fought once in 2020 against Miguel Baeza, was knocked out really early in the second round of that one. Honestly, I was really impressed by Miguel Baeza in that fight. That had very little to do with Matt Brown being over the hill. He had a two fight win streak coming into that. This is a really interesting fight because these are two guys with a ton of experience and a ton of ability. Matt Brown, great on the ground, brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, brown belt in judo, but still has really heavy hands. And Carlos Condit's Carlos Condit. You get what you expect with Carlos Condit. So these two guys, a really interesting matchup, one that we've waited a really long time for.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It won't be. I don't think there'll be as much fireworks as if it were 8 years ago, but excited nonetheless. Keys, Matt Brown should probably bring this to the ground. I think if Carlos Condit can keep it standing, I think that'll be in his favor. What about you, man?
I agree with you there. It's going to be a mix of styles wherever the fight ends up. I think that's who has the advantage, whether it be like you said, Brown to the ground, Condit on the feet.
All right, what's your prediction?
This is a tough one because these are two guys that have so much experience, and when you get these kind of fights, it's really hard to make any kind of guess as to who's going to take it. I lean Carlos Condit in this one. We saw Matt Brown, like I said, have some struggles with Baeza earlier in 2020. Again, that was a really strong performance from Baeza. Matt Brown had some flashes there, but I'm going to give Condit the advantage here. He's 4 years younger, and I think he's going to be able to put Matt Brown down in this fight. Not necessarily a finish, but I think he controls it from end to end, probably takes it in a decision.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Carlos Condit by decision. All right, to the main event of the evening, one of our favorites here on the show. Well, both of them. We love these guys both. Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. This is the fight we all want to see, and this is the perfect way to kick off the year, I think. Max Holloway, former champ, losing 3 of 4, but I can't blame him. He lost to Poirier, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, and Alex Volkanovski twice, but he could have won the second one in some people's eyes. And Calvin Kattar, probably the best boxer in the UFC right now. Stipe Miocic is a close second, but though. What's your thoughts on this matchup?
Like you said, two world-class guys at what they do. Holloway, so creative as a striker. Like you said, back-to-back losses in title fights against Volkanovski. The second one, a split decision that I thought Volkanovski won that fight, but I wouldn't have had a problem with the judges giving that to Max Holloway. A win against Frankie Edgar before that. Again, like you said, the loss to Poirier, but he was moving weight divisions and fighting one of the best lightweights that there's ever been. On the other side, you've got Calvin Kattar, who's been around for a long time when it just comes to just fighting in general. But he's really starting to hit his stride in the UFC at the age of 32. Knocked off Dan Ige and Jeremy Stephens in 2020. And we all remember that elbow against Jeremy Stephens to finish that fight off. He's really bounced back from his loss against Zabit in 2019, and he looks like a guy who's a legitimate contender in this division in 2020. I don't want to go out on a limb and make predictions for what guys are going to end up doing through all of 2021, but if I had to pick a guy that I think could end 2021 as my fighter of the year, I might put Calvin Kattar's name down right now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. What he showed in 2021, what in 2020 could definitely carry over to this next year because he's only going to get better, I think, until he gets super old. And my thing with this fight is when's the damage that Max Holloway has taken? When is it going to catch up to him? And I think with someone as refined as Calvin Kattar who can hit those spots and pick and choose where he hits you, I'm concerned for Max Holloway because he already has the third most significant head strikes taken in UFC history, and he just turned 29. So I think that damage might catch up to him soon. Hopefully not. I hope it doesn't because I love this guy, but it might be only a matter of time. All right, what are your keys, man?
If Calvin Kattar keeps this to a straight boxing match and puts this fight in a phone booth, then I think he's going to dominate. But if Max Holloway can stick and move, stay out of close range against against Kattar, then I think it's going to be a really interesting fight, and it's probably going to go longer than people are expecting. Both of these guys have power. Both of these guys can cause fireworks. But I think Holloway can extend this fight, and I think that's his best bet. And if he can get creative with what he's doing and creative at keeping Kattar at a distance, then that's going to be the key for him. And like I said, if Kattar mucks this up and gets in tight with Holloway and just makes him trade shots with him, then he's going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And I think one thing that a lot of people overlook about Kattar is his wrestling. I find his wrestling to be underrated. So I think if he does get in a sticky situation where he has to close distance quickly, I wouldn't be surprised if he clinches him up against the fence. because I think that'll force Holloway to go into a phone booth. And I think if Kattar keeps us up against the fence, I think it's all him, the whole fight. All right, what's your prediction?
Well, I probably alluded to it a little bit earlier, saying that I would put Calvin Kattar down as my prediction for Fighter of the Year 2021. I think he takes this fight. I think he knocks Max Holloway out, and I think he puts himself in position to be the next challenger for Alexander Volkanovski.
I can't disagree with you. As much as I love Max Holloway, I think that damage might catch up to him in this fight because of his boxing skills, like I had stated previously. And I just think Calvin Kattar's that good. I think when he does win this fight, he'll get that next title challenge or a title eliminator because Ortega probably got it next. Anyway, that'll do it for our preview of Fight Night Holloway versus Kattar. What news you got, man?
Well, some interesting rule changes coming down from USADA. Updated rules January 1st. Athletes will no longer be punished for testing positive for marijuana, which is very interesting for a lot of guys. We've seen so many guys in the UFC get caught up in that. Nate Diaz, Matt Riddle a couple years ago. And we've seen guys leave the UFC and leave the limelight of MMA entirely because of that. And now there's a change being made between the UFC and the United States Anti-Doping Agency that the UFC will no longer punish athletes for testing positive for THC.
And I think now it's up to the commissions in each state to really let off on that, because I think with what the UFC and USADA have, it's the Nevada State Athletic Commission that suspends you for it. So it's time for the athletic commission to stand up and just say, hey, we're not going to suspend people. I talked to Kevin Kroom last week, and he said, hey, pot's the best painkiller. You can't – it doesn't make my stomach feel weird like ibuprofen does, and it doesn't enhance my performance. So why not? Why is it not legal? So this is a huge first step, and I can't wait for more. All right. I want to bring John Jones is officially 250 pounds of lean, mean fighting machine. And he is ready for anyone.
That's terrifying. John Jones at 250 pounds is absolutely terrifying because, let me look this up real quick because John Jones, his whole story coming into his UFC career was that he was like the little brother that never was like up to the same caliber as his NFL playing brothers. His older brother Chandler Jones that plays for the Arizona Cardinals is a 6'5", 265 pound defensive end. And if John Jones is anywhere near as quick as his brother is at that size, people are going to get absolutely messed up in the UFC heavyweight division because if the genes run deep in that family, the quick twitch athleticism that John Jones is going to keep by bulking up that much is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I'm scared for this division. And it's, people are saying John Jones is old. I'm like, not for heavyweight.
No.
This is where they just get started. And I think, I don't know, I think Francis or Stipe is in for a long fight when the time comes.
Exactly. That's the thing. People talk about John Jones being old at 33 years old. No, he's just been around that long. Like Francis Ngannou is the new hot face in the UFC heavyweight division over the last couple of years. He's older than John Jones.
He's 36.
Yeah. He's a year older than John Jones. John Jones is 33 and Ngannou's 34. Like Stipe's 38 and he's the best heavyweight on the planet right now. Like people need to stop like boxing that stuff in. Like and Ngannou is older than Jones, which is ridiculous.
And Adesanya is saying, he's like, John Jones is old. I'm like, no, he's not. You're 2 years younger than he is, dude. Be quiet. And I just want to see that fight because I think John Jones would just have his way with him. Like, I don't.
Probably.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I can't wait for him to get his head blasted off by Blachowicz. I think that's bound to happen. But we'll get there come March.
We'll get there in due time.
Nate Diaz is going to move down to 55. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. But speaking of Nate Diaz, Paul Felder said if they gave him a Nate Diaz fight, he'd take it, which is interesting.
I'd be all in for that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I'd love that. Or Tony Ferguson wants Nate Diaz, and
Any of those.
Anything. What
I think the UFC probably can't make a Justin Gaethje Nate Diaz fight, because as much as Nate Diaz bleeds, they would have to replace the entire octagon between fights if that's not the main event.
Yeah. That's my concern. Like, the fight won't be past 2 rounds especially if he fights Tony Ferguson. Let's be honest here. If the fight's not going anywhere. I don't know if you saw this, but employees at assisted living facility accused of inciting residents to fight each other.
There you go. Keep them in shape.
Keep them in shape. Good Lord.
Look at how many people out here. Look at how many people out here are doing Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to have consistent exercise. Who says the elderly can't get in on it?
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Yeah, I don't have anything else. You got anything else?
I'm all set, man.
Yeah, definitely. You can catch me writing on bloodycanvas.net. I write pieces here and there. Where can people catch you besides on here, Daniel?
You can find me on Twitter at Daniel Woods WV. It's gonna be a pretty well-rounded sports situation there. Hockey season just started, and despite living in West Virginia, I'm for some reason a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. There's gonna be a lot of tweets about that. And college basketball, college football, MMA, you're gonna get it all. So follow me at Daniel Woods WV on Twitter. And anything I pop up on elsewhere, you're gonna find on that Twitter feed. So that's the best way to figure out where I'm at.
Yeah, same. Jakob Janoski MMA, you can find me there. But I still post a lot about college basketball, pretty much anything, NFL football. But yeah. All right. Well, Daniel, thanks for coming back. Next one's 100.
Sure.
All right. We'll see you guys later.